I got this box. It's a pretty good box. What do you guys think of it?
Hey, what's in the box?
Nothing really. I mean, nothing super important, I bet.
Are you sure? Have you opened it?
I haven't opened it, but
Don't you want to know what's in the box?
I don't really care what's in the box.
What do you mean?
I mean, there can't be anything that good in it. It's from
in that kind of a box, you could fit a lot of great things.
Yeah, I guess you could fit awesome things inside this box, but it's from my bro, and my bro doesn't really send me great stuff.
What if he sent you money? Finally, what if he sent you that money he owed you? Or what if he sent you the keys to a new car?
That would be very, very cool, but I don't really care what's in this box.
Are you sure? I want to know what's in the box.
Why do you want to know what's in the box so bad?
There could be something really important in that box. Imagine like a wonderful surprise.
Yeah, and I guess they probably want to know what's inside the box too, so go ahead, you can open it. You need sharper fingernails. There you go.
There's nothing in the box.
There's nothing in my box. What
do you mean?
Yeah, my bro
that?
He plays tricks on me. He just sends me empty boxes. And I mean, if you're gonna put your hope in something like a box from your brother who always plays tricks on you, you're gonna be disappointed. Like, I'm sure you're disappointed. I'm sure.
I don't want to meet your brother.
I'm sure y'all are disappointed too. But when you put your hope in God, you are not disappointed.
Well, guys, this is week 4, which means it's our final week of our adventure with Joseph. And did you know that when we put our hope in God, we are not disappointed? It's true. That's exactly what we're going to find out, is that when we place our hope in God, we are not disappointed. Well, the famine, which remember the word famine means that people are starving. There's not enough food to go around. The famine had struck Egypt, just as Joseph said it would. And it not only hit Egypt, but it also hit the neighboring lands. Now remember, Joseph had designed a plan that he would store up food for this time exactly. Well, neighboring lands had heard about that plan, and they needed to go to Joseph to buy food. One of those lands was the land of Canaan. Now, I don't know if you guys remember, but that's where Joseph used to live. In fact, it's still where Joseph's father and his brothers live currently, and they are hungry. I mean, their stomachs are grumbling. So they load up some money and they travel to Egypt to buy food. Do you know who they're going to have to ask? Joseph. But they don't know that they're going to Joseph. Remember last they saw him, they sold him into slavery in Egypt. You might be thinking, Miss Courtney, no way Joseph gives them food. I mean, they hated him. They wanted to kill him. They sold him into slavery. No way Joseph's going to help them out. They are going to be so disappointed. But remember, guys, when we put our hope in God, we are not disappointed. So let's read. In Genesis 42, verses 6 through 8, we read this. Since Joseph was the governor of all of Egypt and in charge of selling the grain to all the people, it was to him that his brothers came. When they arrived, they bowed down before him with their faces to the ground. Joseph recognized his brothers instantly, but he pretended to be a stranger and spoke harshly to them. "Where are you from?" he demanded. "From the land of Canaan," they replied. "We have come to buy food." Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they didn't recognize him. So Joseph goes on to ask them questions. He accuses them of being spies, and then finally he starts to ask them about their family. He inquires about their father, Jacob. They tell him he's old of age. And then they come to find out that he has a younger brother. And, of course, a brother that's no longer with them. That's Joseph. So as they're telling him all of these things, he decides this. He's going to give them all of their money back, but they don't know. It's a surprise to them. He's going to give them all of their money back, and he's going to provide supplies for their journey. But they have to leave one brother with him, and they have to bring their youngest brother back. So, is your mind a little blown right now? Because mine is. I mean, here's Joseph. Yeah, he seems a little upset at first when he sees his brothers, but instantly, instead of punishing them, he gives them their money back. He puts it in their sack secretively and gives them supplies for their journey home. What? That definitely wasn't disappointment. Because when we put our hope in God, we are not disappointed. Well, after they had been home for some time, of course they ran out of supplies. And so they had to go back to Egypt with their youngest brother, Benjamin. But remember, Jacob was nervous. Jacob, their father, was nervous because they had all their money that they went with the first time. So he tells them to bring gifts and double the money before they head out. So the men packed Jacob's gifts and doubled the money and headed off with Benjamin. They finally arrived in Egypt and presented themselves to Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the manager of his household, "These men will eat with me at noon. Take them inside the palace." That doesn't seem very mean, right? So far, Joseph has been nothing but pretty nice to his brothers, because when you hope in God, you are not disappointed. The brothers approached the manager of Joseph's household and spoke to him at the entrance of the palace. "Sir," they said, "we came to Egypt once before to buy food, but as we were returning home, we stopped for the night and opened our sacks. Then we discovered that each man's money, the exact amount paid, was in the top of his sack. Here it is. We have brought it back with us. We also have additional money to buy more food. We have no idea who put our money in our sacks. But we do, right? It was Joseph." "Relax. Don't be afraid," the household manager told them. "Your God, the God of your father, must have put this treasure into your sacks. I know that I received your payment." So here we see the brothers, terrified, freaking out, because here they've come again to ask for more food, and the last time all the money that they gave them was somehow back into their bags. But the household manager says, "Don't be afraid. Your God must have given you this treasure, because when we put our hope in God, we are not disappointed." Well, finally, Joseph comes back in, and eventually he reveals himself to his brothers. Can you imagine? Can you imagine being those brothers sitting at that table, about to feast on something miraculous, amazing, after you've been starving, and come to find out the very man who is blessing you with this is the same brother that you hated, you plotted to kill, and eventually sold into slavery? I'd be pretty blown away if I was sitting there. And I don't know about you, but if I were Joseph, I don't know if I could have reconciled like that. But see, Joseph never put his hope in his brothers, in his circumstances, in where he was. No, he put his hope in God. And when we put our hope in God, we are not disappointed. See, what they intended for evil caused a broken family, but God intended it for good. Not only was Joseph able to save and feed his brothers and his father, but he was able to feed nations. See, God saved nations, and he reconciled a broken family. Later on, Joseph's entire family would come to live in the land of Egypt. Now, I want you to know, because this is really important at the time, Hebrews and Egyptians did not get along well. But the Pharaoh was so pleased with what Joseph had done. I mean, like we just said, Joseph had saved nations of people with his wisdom and his plan. He was so impressed with that he says this to Joseph. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Now that your father and brothers have joined you here, choose any place in the entire land of Egypt for them to live. Give them the best land of Egypt. Let them live in the region of Goshen. And if any of them have special skills, put them in charge of my livestock too." So not only has their family been restored, but now they're being elevated to such a high status, all because of Joseph putting his hope in God. When we put our hope in God, we are not disappointed. His whole family lived in the best land, and not only that, they were provided with jobs too. When we put our hope in God, we are not disappointed. After some time, Joseph's father, Jacob, passed away, and suddenly the brothers became fearful again. They were like, "Oh no, Joseph's going to hate us. He's going to seek revenge on us." But who does Joseph put his hope in? God, not his brothers. So Joseph says this. He says, "Don't be afraid of me. Am I God that I can punish you? You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. He brought me to this position so that I could save the lives of many people. No, don't be afraid. I will continue to take care of you and your children." So he reassured them by speaking kindly to them. Joseph was right. His brothers intended all the things they did for evil. But because Joseph placed his hope in God, he saved nations from starvation, and God restored his family back together. See, when we put our hope in God, we are not disappointed.
Joseph went through a lot. As we saw, he went through being sold into slavery. He was sent to prison. He was in prison for a very long time. But through all of that, he put his hope nowhere except for in God. His hope in God, we didn't get to see how that was going to turn out immediately. And it had me on the edge of my seat. Was he going to die in prison? Was he ever going to see his family again? I wasn't sure. But he put his hope in God. And when Pharaoh eventually saw him, when he found out what he was capable of, when he brought him to power, it had turned out to be good, not just for him. I mean, he got a family, he got a position of power. People called on him. He was number 2 in Egypt. But it wasn't just good for him. It was good for all of Egypt. It was even good for the neighboring nations. Even his people, the Hebrews, who the Egyptians weren't too fond of, got to benefit from that. They were all saved. They all received a salvation because the hope that Joseph had from the very beginning. Just like that salvation that Joseph was able to provide to the Egyptians by interpreting Pharaoh's dream, using his wisdom, using his character, and saving food for those hard years that were to come, Jesus was able to come into our lives and provide us a salvation, not just for his family or his close friends, but for all. See, when Jesus came into our lives, he didn't do it just for one day. He came to save us from evil, from darkness, from the enemy, today, tomorrow, next week, eternity. And that is a huge gift because that wasn't something that we could have purchased. We can't beg him for that. It was already given to us before we took our first breath. Salvation came because Jesus had good character, and he brought us hope that we didn't have. And when we have that hope, we don't have to hold it in. We get to share it with others because it's a gift that they also get to have. When we hope in God, we are not disappointed. And I know you've probably received a gift before, right? That you're really excited. Maybe it was a Christmas gift or a birthday gift, and it was just the right shape. It made just the right sound. And you're like, this has to be that one thing. And you've opened it, and it's cool, but you might be a little disappointed. The gift of salvation we get by believing in God, by choosing Jesus daily, it doesn't disappoint, ever. Because when we hope in God, we are not disappointed.
All right, guys, so we learned a lot from today's lesson, and I want to see what you guys remember. And so I'll ask you 3 questions, and we'll see how good you do. The first question is, who came looking for food from Joseph? Was it A, his brothers? Was it B, a raven? Or was it C, a blind beggar? His brothers, a raven, or a blind beggar? Give you a second to answer. The answer is A, his brothers. They actually came to Egypt because they were starving because of the famine in the land. Question number 2 is going to be a true or false question. Here it is. Is this statement true or false? Joseph made his brothers pay for the food that he gave them. True or false? Joseph made his brothers pay for the food that they gave him. It's actually false. The answer is false because Joseph gave all of their money back when they tried to pay, and he gave them even more supplies than they even needed. All right, third and final question is going to be a fill in the blank. When we put our hope in blank, we are not blank. When we put our hope in blank, we are not blank. Give you a second to answer it. All right, here comes the answer. When we put our hope in God, we are not disappointed. And that's really true. When we put our hope in God, we aren't left disappointed.
This week we learned when we put our hope in God, we are not disappointed. And let's be honest for a minute. We often put our hopes in things that aren't God. We put our hopes in things like sports or friendships or relationships or our family. We'll often think that those make us happy or that they give us the feeling of importance or they make us feel important. And honestly, the only thing that we really should put our hope in is God. So this week, I'm writing out all of the things that I put my hope in that's not God. Sometimes I'll put my hope in money. Or I'll put my hope in my relationship with my son. Or even let's see, school. Maybe you put your hope in your grades. I want to challenge you this week. All of these different things that you put your hope in that are not God, take a moment, write them down, and wad them up. And play a little trash get ball, Write them down and say, God, I'm not going to put my hope in that this week. Say a prayer. Ask the Lord to help you put your hope in Him. Because when we hope in God, we're not disappointed.
About my life today. I know it's arms that showed my debt is paid. Sometimes I hear the voice of things of old, but God's got me, He's in control. I got a smile on my face today. I see my way 'cause He is the way. It sounds crazy, but understand, all things are good when it's in His hands. God's got it. God's got it. We're in His hands. God's got it. God's got it. We're in His hands. God's got it. God's got it. dreams, and I've got my heart filled with love. Because you shine from up above, and every day my life is filled with love and joy because you are alive.